Hello, my friends. I'm still not Jim Nance. I don't appreciate getting his texts, his voicemails. It's just making me cranky. And speaking of cranky, I want to talk to you today about a topic that I get a lot of questions about, and it's causing some anxiety among the gaming public. And I'm talking about Pine Tar Baseball manager cards. People have actually sent me telegrams. Yes, telegrams. Telling me, Kurt, the manager cards, what gives? How do they work? Why do I need them? Why am I asking you so many questions? And why did I write this in a telegram and send it to you? Well, I can't answer all of your questions, but I can address the manager card issues. So put the gun down and join me for a discussion and a demo of Pine Tar Baseball manager cards. About 3 years ago, or is it 4? Gee whiz. James Formo and I were working on the Pine Tar Baseball franchise all-star team set. And we were talking about the impact of managers on the outcome of those teams, and we thought it would be fun to put together a set. Well, so we started with the 30 most iconic managers in each franchise history, and then that expanded, and then that expanded, and then that expanded, and then finally we had 108 managers on these playing card stock that you can use. There are at least 4 managers in the set, so per franchise. So, and of course, you have multiple managers who've done more than one franchise, but you have a minimum of 4 managers per franchise in the set. There are 108 managers, so it's a full deck of playing cards. They're double-sided, and they are on playing card stock. These are the manager cards that you can order at ttlbaseballgame.com. ttlbaseballgame.com. All right, now, ordinarily, and we're going to start with the rules, and I know that's going to be a stress inducer, so put the gun down. Put the gun down. All right, so we're starting with the rules. Now, if you read the rules to Pine Tar Baseball, what you will see is that there are limits on how much base stealing you can do. So let's look at the rule book and look at the limits. It says here, limits are placed on players so they can make only as many attempts on stolen bases per series and only during certain points in the game. Okay, so that's one important factor to think about for Pine Tar. Those rated as N stealers, and I'll show you an example of that right now. I've got Dave Stewart here, not the guitar player and the keyboard guy for the Eurythmics. Not that Dave Stewart. The pitcher. If he has an N on his stolen base opportunities, he can't go at all. He can't ever go. All right. Those rated N may never attempt to steal. Those rated AA through E may attempt to steal, but are subject to limitations given within the steal opportunity table. Well, that's given for you here. So, on stolen bases, according to the Pine Tar rules, in a given game, you have 4 stolen base points to spend, 4 of them. So you can spend them on any base stealer that you choose that does not have an N rating. So I'll give you another example here. If you really want to send Rich Gedman of the 1986 Red Sox, he has an 89% chance of stealing, but he has an E rating. Well, what does that mean? He can only go in the 8th inning or later and 1 time every other series. And you can't use an E-rated stealer on the hit and run. So let's get a little more adventurous. Let's look at a legitimate base stealer like Rickey Henderson of the 1989 Oakland Athletics. He's a double-A stealer, which means that he can go anytime, once per 9 innings, and once more in extra innings, and you can use him on the hit and run if you want to. And you use him anytime during the 9 innings, and it costs you 1 point. If you send him in extras, it doesn't cost you any points. So, you have 4 steal points to spend per 9-inning game. So if you send Rickey, for example, it costs you a point in the first 9 innings. If you send a lesser base stealer, it costs you more. And there are some restrictions on when he can go. So that's one area of strategy. Here's another one that I want to show you, and that is the hit and run. Now, hit and run plays, as we see here, the player manager controlling the offensive team can put on a hit and run play. This may be done anytime there are less than 2 outs and there is runner on first, or first and second, or first and third. When a player is on base, when a pitcher's on base, there's no hit and runs that can be called. All right. Now, here are the modifiers to the hit and run. That's easy enough. But there's a limit on using the hit and run. Here's the limit. Hit and runs are limited to 2 uses per game per team. So we have 2 areas. One is the area of stolen base points, and the second is the area of hit and runs, where you're limited in their frequency of use. But we did some research on the managers, and instead of those generic strategy limits, we instead changed the strategy limits based on the usage of those strategies by those managers in the games. So what does the data tell us? So here are some examples of what that looks like. Here's Joe Madden. The first thing, okay, these are 3 years old, so the Los Angeles Angels aren't on here. But the first thing is oh yeah, they are. Look at that. He must have been just hired. So we've got these teams listed that he managed. We've got okay, and that was before. That was when he started his career. All right, so we got that. All right, so he doesn't have the Angels from before, from currently. All right, so we have his career numbers, wins, losses, percentage. Now, based on what the data tells us, we have a look at his ratings. What did I do? Well, I broke out the ratings into intentional walks. How often does he use that strategy? For Joe Madden, it's a limit of 1 walk per series. So he's not a guy that walks people very often. Maximum innings pitched. This is for the pitcher. Maximum innings pitched. The ace of the staff gets 1 inning plus 1 inning, so he rides that person harder. But the other starters, he pulls faster, so they lose an inning. So you have to determine the ace of the staff. He gets a 1 inning bump, but your other starters lose an inning in their maximum innings pitched. All right, now we look at the hit and run. For Joe Madden, the hit and run is limited to 1 use per game. Instead of the 2 that the rules allow you, he's down to 1 per game. He doesn't hit and run very often. Stolen base points, instead of 4 per game, he's down to 3 per game. So if you're using the Madden card, you get these changes, but you also get the Joe bonus. Every manager has a bonus area on his card. The Joe bonus is if there are 7 relief pitchers on the roster, and again, you construct the roster, you make the decisions about how many pitchers there are. But I'm trying to encourage you here to put 7 relievers on the roster. If there are, one of those relievers may re-roll a batter outcome in a game. But after the re-roll happens, then Joe's got to go out and yank him and get in another reliever. So I'm trying to encourage you to construct your roster here as Joe Maddon would. If you do, and you have the 7 relievers available to you, you can re-roll a batter outcome one time in a game. But after you do that, the cost is, after the re-roll, you must remove the reliever from the game and put in one of the other 7 relievers. You can use that once per game. So every manager rated on these cards gets an impact on his intentional walks. I'll give you another example in a minute. Impact on how he uses his starting pitchers, impact on his hit and run strategy, and impact on his stolen base points. Then there's a bonus particular to the strategies that he employs. Here, I'm trying to get you to cycle through your relief pitchers, and I'm giving you a reward for doing that, as Joe Maddon would. By doing this, you'll be managing your team, whichever team it is that you give him, as more realistically as Joe Maddon would, and you're going to learn about Joe Maddon's strategies as a manager. All right, so let's take another example. All right, here's John McNamara. We give you John McNamara's managerial resume. We give you his career record, his teams, and the years he was with them. And now we go through his ratings. So now let's put Joe Maddon next to him so you can see how he's different than John McNamara. All right, so first, John McNamara, limit of 7 intentional walks per series. John McNamara used the intentional walk a great deal. Joe Maddon does not. So you have the intentional walk, you have a limit per series, but it's much higher than Joe Maddon's. Maximum innings pitched, you have a limit of a +1 bump to 1 starter per series. He would ride one starting pitcher harder than the others, and he gets a 1 inning bump to them. Hit and run, pretty big hit and run guy. Instead of 2, as the Pine Tar rules would tell you to do, John McNamara uses them 4 times, can use the hit and run 4 times per game, but he's down a point in steal points per game. So he would run, but he'd often use the hit and run instead of the straight steal, so you go from 4 points down to 3. Now the Mac bonus. You add +7 to all the sacrifice hit ratings on all sacrifice, but not suicide squeeze bunt attempts. Here, I'm trying to give credit to the proficiency of John McNamara's teams using the bunt and the frequency of using the bunt. I'm trying to encourage you to use the sacrifice bunt by giving you a +7 to the rating of each player if it's a sacrifice bunt. But you don't get the bonus if it's a squeeze bunt. Why? John McNamara did not suicide squeeze very often. So he gets a normal squeeze bunt, but he was sacrificing left and right. So you get the bump for the sacrifice chances, but not for suicide squeezes. That's John McNamara. So how does he differ from someone like Joe Maddon? Well, he's walking people more often. He doesn't pull his other starters. He does give his ace a bump, one pitcher a bump of an inning, but he's not pulling the others as Joe Madden would. He's hit and running more, and he's stealing about the same rate relative to the rest of the league in the years he was managing. Okay, let's go through another example. I'll move McNamara over here, and we will compare him to Casey Stengel. Casey Stengel, you'll have his teams here, the years down here, his one lost mark there. All right, so intentional walks. Casey Stengel is limited to 3 per series. If you use his card, you get 3 intentional walks per series. Maximum innings pitched, you subtract 1 from each starter. What that's telling you is, relative to the league when he managed, he had a relatively quick hook on his starter. Hit and run, did it a lot. 5 times per game, up to 5 times per game. Stolen base points, not a lot of straight stealing. He's down from 4 points that the rules allow you to 2. So you subtract 1 from your starting pitchers. You say, gee, how am I going to make up for that? Well, there's the KC bonus. Let's look at that. The KC bonus is that 2 starting pitchers per series may be used in relief with a maximum inning pitched of 1 as long as they are not scheduled to start. What I'm trying to do here is to encourage you to use your bullpen as Casey actually did, and that is plugging in starting pitchers in relief, which is something he did. And actually, many of his contemporaries would do this as well. So if you don't have them scheduled to start in the series, you can plug in your starting pitchers as relievers with a maximum innings pitched of 1, even if they're not rated for that specifically on their card. So you're losing an inning pitch from each starter, but you're able to use other starters in relief to make up for it, and that's what Casey Stengel did. All right, let's do a couple more, and then you'll have a sense of it. Let's bring on John Gibbons, the Toronto Blue Jays manager. All right, so John Gibbons was a Toronto manager. Here's his record, there's his team. He's limited on intentional walks to 2 per series. Maximum innings pitched. 1 non-closing reliever gets +1 for the entire series. So his setup man, he would ride hard, and he would get a +1 for the entire series. You identify who that person is, and he gets the +1 on his relief innings per game. Hit and run 2 times per game, basically league average. Stolen bases 4 points per game, league average. All right, the John Gibbons bonus. The hitter that bats second in the lineup may re-roll his batter outcome once per series. The hitter that bats second in the lineup may re-roll his batter outcome once per series. Why did I do this? Well, to try and encourage you to manage as John Gibbons did. Very, very often, John Gibbons would put his most productive hitter not in the 3 spot, not in the 4 spot, not even the leadoff spot, but number 2. So what I'm trying to do is to get you to do your lineup construction as John Gibbons did, by having your hitter that bats second able to re-roll once per series, because obviously you're going to want your best hitter with that re-roll chance. So you're encouraged here by the construction of my John Gibbons card to be able to set up your lineup as John Gibbons did. All right. Should we do one more? Let's maybe do one more. Let's do Danny Murtaugh. Okay. So we've got Pittsburgh for Danny Murtaugh. We've got his seasons of managing. Of course, he had pretty serious heart issues to deal with, and so this is broken up a little bit. There are his wins and losses. Okay, and his ratings, intentional walks, 5 per series. So we know Danny Murtaugh was walking people whenever he thought he needed to. So a lot of intentional walks are at your disposal there. Maximum innings pitched, he would use 2 of his starting pitchers heavier than the others. So those 2 get +1 per series for maximum innings pitched. Hit and run 2 times per game, about league average. Stolen base points 3 points per game, a little bit less than league average. What is the Danny bonus? Well, he's not a bunting manager. We see that right away here. So the Danny bonus is a limit of 2 sacrifice or squeeze bunt attempts per series. So you got 2 sacrifices or 2 squeeze bunt attempts, or a combination, obviously, per series. Didn't believe in bunting much with his lineups. Many seasons he didn't need to bunt much. But this is the Danny bonus. So the Danny bonus is actually a negative on some of your options, but it forces you to think about using your offense like Danny Murtaugh did. On the other hand, you've got some other things where, I don't want to call them idiosyncratic, but they are different for compared to what some other managers would. If you compare Danny Murtaugh to John Gibbons, for example, he's using the intentional walk a lot more. He's riding his starters harder. He's stealing bases less often. And so there are some points of comparison. So when you ask me about the manager cards, this is what they look like, and this is how you would use them. So if you pulled out a Pittsburgh Pirate team, for example, or any team, and you wanted to use Danny Murtaugh as your manager, these are the bonuses, but these are also the constraints that would be on your strategy that you would have to think around in terms of using the manager cards. They add an important and I think a very fun element to Pine Tar Baseball. I encourage you to pick them up. And of course, the other thing, again, these are on regular poker card stock. Double-sided, managers on each side, a 54-card deck, plus, so with 2 sides, so 108 managers total. A lot of fun. Those are your Pine Tar Baseball manager cards. Thanks for watching. Check them out at ttlbaseballgame.com. I'll put the link in the description for this video. Thanks for being with me. Have a wonderful day. So long, everybody.